Alright, so we're done working on the radio face. Just pay attention to the back of this. You see how there's a bunch of stuff like sticking through? As long as it doesn't stick through too far, it's not really going to matter, okay? Because our camera move is going to be something subtle like this, or something like that. If we came from the side like this, and then went around, we definitely have to kind of fill this area in, but we're not going to show any of that, so don't worry too much about it, okay? And even if, let's say we wanted to extend this back area, we can't go in and grab the hull, because with all the history we've deleted, as we start to pull this back, you see that we lose a lot of that connection that we had there. So I'm going to go to Trim Edge, just so you can see how we would do this, and I can grab this edge, and just go to Surfaces, Extrude, set it to distance. I'm going to go in the Z direction, and there we go. Okay, now I can go even further, just taking that length, and maybe making it 10. And you see how I can just kind of fill that gap in. Okay. So even if we don't extend it far enough, we can always extend it further just by doing that. Okay, but right now I don't care about it, so I'm just going to delete it. Alright, so now we're on the AC controls. So again, we're going to go to Google and just look up a car AC controls. Okay, now I'm doing these just so you can see, it's not like I'm doing anything magic. I'm just kind of going there and looking at it. And I want to go with something like this kind of setup. Okay, so we have 3 knobs and then like 2 buttons here. There's a bunch of other ones like the sliding thing and these things. You can go crazy with all the different controls you can set up there. That one's a fancy one. Alright, so I'm going to go with the one that I just had, which was this guy. And so we're just going to create 3 bumps in here, and then 3 little cutouts or 2 little cutouts for that. So we'll do the same little process we did before, creating a NURB circle, moving it up, rotating it, scaling it, ... Going to our back view, my back view, whatever yours happens to be, and just lining this up. Now obviously my proportions here, this is more of a triangle shape, this is more rectangular, so I just have to be a little bit creative in how I kind of set this up. So maybe I'll do a big one here, a big one there, and again I can just figure out what this is, 3.474, and just make it negative to get it to be even. Duplicate it again, set this one to 0, there we go. So that'll work, and I can put a button here, put another button there, let's say. Alright, so I'll just duplicate this. I'll give it a little bit of shape, just going to Control Vertex. Just make sure I go on the curve. And you can see I'm just kind of tweaking it, just grabbing points and adjusting them. Alright, so that one looks good. So let me duplicate it, move it to the negative side. And I also want to negative scale it like so. Okay, so I'm just going to go to my scale X, make it negative, and there we go. Okay, maybe I can even put this. I'm just going to duplicate it just to see what it would look like up here. Be better centered. Yeah, that could work. Okay, and what I'm going to do with these guys is these are going to be the buttons here. I'm going to tighten them up a little bit more. just going to grab these two and tighten that up like that. Okay, so that's the shape of the buttons that are there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another circle, or just duplicate this guy. Pull him up here, scale it down, and create the hole that would kind of fit these buttons. So these guys are just basically, they're going to be placeholders for right now. There we go. Okay, so that's good. So I'm just going to delete those. That'll work. Okay. So I don't really need these guys here. I could, if I decided or found a button that I wanted to add in there, like this guy has a bunch of buttons, I could figure out one of those and add it in there. But for now, I'll just leave it alone. I'll just kind of ignore those pieces. So I'm going to grab these. Grab that face, go to my Edit NURBS, Project Curve, Active View, voila. Okay, so now I have it on the surface. Now again, we can do the same kind of stuff that we did up here. This is actually going to be a little bit more different in the fact that these are actually going to be bumping out. So how these are kind of coming outward, that's what I want these ones to do. So what I can do is, now that these are projected on the surface, I'm just going to extrude them a touch. And I'm going to make it, let's say, -5 in the Z direction. That way they come out this way. Okay. Now I could have just grabbed these and popped them onto that surface, or extruded them and then pushed them into the surface like I did up here. But I'm just showing you a different method. Okay. So now I'm going to take this, shift click that. Actually, let me start with the circle. And then go to Edit NURBS, Surface Fillet, Circular Fillet. Create Curve on Surface is checked. This doesn't matter for right now, but I'll just leave it the way it was. Okay, I get nothing. So let me go through and make this one positive, make this one negative. Okay, it looks like it's on the inside of this. So they both want to be negative, because I want the fillet to be on the outside, so that I have the blending happening on the outside, so I'm capturing this transition here. Okay, I'll make it a little bit bigger. There we go, -0.1. I'm going to check and make sure that I'm not intersecting anything weird. I'm not, so that's good. I'm going to take all of these and maybe not make them -5. Let me go in here and make this -1, -0.25. -0.25 looks like it's probably going to be good. Okay. I'm also going to go to the scale, and I'm going to knock the scale down a little bit. 0.25. Oops. 0.5. Why did I do that? It's odd that it went downward like that. Typically it doesn't do that. I can fix that another way. I can right click and just go to Hull on here and just scale this down. And you'll see that my fillet is also updating. Okay, so I just scaled it down just to give me some tapering. I'm going to do the same thing to this guy. I'll do the same thing to this guy. Okay, so the fillet looks good here. This radius ended up being -0.1 for both. So I'm just going to do the same thing for all these. Make sure they're both reversed. Make sure they're both negative or 0.1. There we go, good. And there we go, good. Okay. And then we're going to get a button inside here. I'm going to need to model this a little bit more. So I'm going to go to isoparms, and I'm just going to click and drag, and that puts a dotted line like this. I'm going to shift click on the end. So I have one that I've clicked and dragged about there-ish, shift click the end, and I'm going to go to Edit NURBS, Insert Isoparms. I'm going to say between selection 2, Insert, and now I have extra isoparms here that I could play with. So I'm going to go to Hull, I'm going to click on this, and I'm just going to scale it in. Grab the next one, do the same thing. Oops, I missed the next one. Go back to that first one, and just push it in a touch. And just to see what it looks like, I'm going to take this curve precision, shade it up. Yeah, that looks good. It actually has like a faceted look to it, which looks kind of neat. So we have this nice blending from here into this, and then we get this faceting there, which looks nice. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on these guys. Isoparm, click and drag one about halfway back. Shift click the front. Insert isoparms. And I grab the first one, and I scale it down, and I push it in. I grab the second one, and just scale it down slightly. Okay, so we're creating basically like a little lip right there. Edit NURBS, Insert Isoparms, go to Hull, click the first one, scale it down, push it in, go to the next one, scale it down. Alright, so now we got some nice little buttons there. This guy here, let's worry about him now. Let's go to Hull. And we'll taper this in a bit. I think I want to push this one in also. I think it's out too far. And because this is not a perfectly circular shape, as I scale this down, you can see that there's less space here and more space there. So I'm going to just ununiformly scale this. That should be good. Okay, so now we'll put a little fillet on that. And the fillet looks like it might be a little bit too big. So let me go over here, just knock this down some. So I just made it half, negative 0.05. Okay, and then we'll do our little trick with the isoparms. And this is essentially like we do with polygons, inserting edge loops. But we have to do it this way because it's NURBS. So I'm going to go to my back view so I can look at this better. Scale it down. Scale it in like this. Trying to keep a nice consistent rounding here. Shove it in a little bit. Grab the next one out. Scale it down. Okay. Alright, so that should be good. Let me go to these and drop them on my curves layer. Let me go to my outliner, and I will let me delete the history on everything first just so I don't screw everything up. There we go. I will take my circles and drop them into my curves group. Now here's a little trick. I can actually open up two outliners. This little slider on the bottom opens up a second outliner. So I can find my curves group here, there it is, and middle drag from this one into that one. So just a quick way to get that in there. And I'm going to delete all these extra curves that are here because I don't need any of those curves. So I'm just going to turn surface selection off. I'm going to marquee and just hit delete. Okay, and turn surface selection back on. And you'll see the kind of surfaces that we have here. If I cranked up their curve precision shaded, we don't get that blocky look. Just so we can kind of preview it just to make sure that, we're liking the way it's looking. And I really like the way that looks. I think that looks extra fancy. Okay. So now what we're going to do is create our buttons. So I'm going to go to looking at these. We essentially have a cylinder, and then we have this other shape on top of it. Okay, and the same thing for this, same thing for that. So we can try using a cylinder, but I'm pretty sure that we're going to want to try a cube. And as odd as that sounds, this is probably going to be the best way to do this. Okay, so that's about that big. If I hit 3, you see how it rounds it out. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to grab this face, and I'm going to extrude it, and just bring it in the red, in the green. Extrude it again, and pull it out. Okay. Let me go to isolate select here so we can kind of work on just this piece without seeing everything else. So now if I smooth it, you can see what we're getting. Okay, we're not there yet, but you can see how we're kind of getting that same shape. So I know this back face I don't need, so I can delete it, and just by doing that, we're getting more of that shape that we want. So now I'm going to go into edges, double click this edge, and I'll shift double click that edge too, sure. And let's just leave it there. Okay, I'm going to add a bevel. I'm going to tighten up the bevel a bit. Switch back to object mode, hit 3. Alright, that's looking pretty good. Let me switch back to isolate select off just so I can get the sizing. Oops, it's too big. There we go. So that's pretty good. Let me just stick it further inside. That's looking good. Let me isolate it again. So now we can create more of this ridge shape here. So I'm just going to go to face, grab this face, and scale this face down. Then hit 3, and you'll see that we're kind of getting it, but it's not really there yet. Okay, so I'm going to grab this face now and put a bevel on that. And that's why I waited, because I wanted to do that triangle shape first and then add the bevel. So now I hit 3, and it's a little bit more apparent that we have that indication. Okay, and this is actually coming out a bit too far, so I'm just going to grab the points and push it back in. And I'll even grab these points and pull them up some. So it looks like there's a little bit of a arrow downward, like that. So that looks pretty neat. Let's see what else. I really have to avoid adding any divisions going this way, because if I were to add like a bevel going that way and then I smooth it, you can see now we're getting this blocky, not circular. So I have to be very careful about that. I could here add just a little bevel there, and then hit 3, and you'll see that we get this. It's a little bit more obvious what the shape's looking like, but I'm getting some pinching right here. You can see there's like these dark spots. So I don't want to do that because of that that problem. I could also try grabbing these and doing a little bevel. And I'm getting the same kind of thing I was getting before. Okay, and some of this is just a matter of grabbing edges and just kind of tweaking things a little bit. So I'm pulling this edge out. Always going back and forth between 1 and 3. So I want to see what it looks like in 3. And I want to see what it looks like in 1. And I never want to cross these like going that far. Okay, that might fix the problem, but it's not the solution. Okay, I think we were good before. I'm going to avoid doing that. It just looks cleaner like this. Okay, so I like the way that looks. Yeah, that looks good there. Okay, so let me go back to this. Oops, back view. Let me duplicate it. I'll worry about the rotation of this thing afterwards. But eventually I want to get these, kind of lined up so they're not all perfectly straight up and down. Let's stick these in a little bit more just because they look like barbecue knobs. There we go, that's much better. Just grab it on all of these. And sometimes it takes a little, practice getting the right angle so you can select these things easier. But that's all it is, just practice doing it and eventually you'll get it. There we go, that looks good. Alright, now for this guy here, nothing really fancy with him. We're going to create cube. And typically I model a lot of things off of a cube. Just because of how, how uniform I can get things to look just by adding divisions in the right spot. So I'm actually going to model this as one piece and then I'll adjust it. And I'll actually model this as one face and adjust it. So I'm going to delete the rest of these faces here. Okay, so if I can get this one shape to look like that, then all I have to do is extrude it and I'll get the depth of it. So I'm going to go to Insert Edge Loop, drop one in the middle, drop one in the middle, come over to my poly split ring, and just make sure these are both at 0.5. That way it's perfectly centered. And then I can grab the vertices for the corner and scale them in and scale them down. A bit too far in. There we go. I'll drop a couple more here. And again, I'll split these to 0.5 and 0.5. Grab the vertexes for this, and this, and this, and this. And scale it up. Scale it out. Oops. I want to grab all these when I scale it out. Go. Add a couple more divisions here. You can see the process for this, and you can see how easy it is, just kind of taking it one step at a time. There we go. So now we have that shape. If I hit 3, it's going to smooth it out a bit more. Okay. So I know I only need one of these, so I'm just going to delete this side. Okay. I need 2 eventually, but right now I'll just focus on 1. And I'm going to go to Extrude and just push this back. If I hit 3, there's the button. It looks great. And then I can go through and just kind of give it a little bit more shape. I'm going to grab these 2 edges here and just pull this up. And I'm going to delete this back face. So I don't need any of those back faces there. And I'll even grab this, these set of vertices on the end and just push that in. Grab these, push that in. There we go. Okay, so now let's stick it inside here and see what it's looking like. I probably want to go a little bit less bubbly. It looks a little bit too bubbly to me. So let's just scale this down. There we go. That looks nice. Okay. Maybe we'll even go ahead and dip this down further. I think I pulled this up. Just to see. Let's push it in this way. Or maybe I just want to grab this vertex and push that in. There we go. So now we get a little bit of a recessed, bumpy area here. That looks nice. Alright, I like the way that looks. It looks like a little button you'd press in. Come on. There we go. Alright, so now I'm going to duplicate this. And I'm just going to negative scale it in the X direction. And bam, it fits perfectly. Okay, now we do have a little gap right here. I'm not even going to worry about that gap. Okay. If I need to, I can fill it in with whatever, but I don't think I'm going to need to fill it in with anything. Alright, so there's our AC controls. Perfect. Let's go and organize this stuff up. We'll do the same trick we did on the radio. I'm going to marquee all the stuff here, hold Control, and deselect the stuff I don't want. I'm going to Control G to group it. I'll center pivot it. I'll delete the history. I'll call this AC Controls. We'll make a new layer called AC Controls Layer. There we go. We'll go to the outliner and just see if there's anything else we can clean up. All of these little circular fillets are empty. There's no plus signs next to them like there are up here, so we can delete them. These guys are no longer in existence, so we can delete those. And you can see how we're just kind of managing this thing and just kind of working our way down. All right, so we have the AC control vents, we have the radio face, we have the AC controls, we have the bucket here. So our next little mission we're going to do is just the stick shift, and then this little storage area, which I think we're just going to leave as a storage area here. Okay, and then we'll get to the rendering part, and that thing is bothering me now, so I'm just going to add that extra bit to it. It wasn't bothering me before, but now it is. It's 12. There we go. So I'm going to save. I'm actually going to save as also. Sometimes your file can get corrupt, so it's always a good idea to save and then also save as. AC controls done. Alright, there we go. So now the next thing we'll do is move on and do the stick shift.